Well, whoever is in the Mr. Ballens story today is going to be a very, very stupid person indeed. Because his tagline for this video is, he tried to outrun a £14,000 vehicle. I don't mean £14,000 price. I mean LB. I mean its weight. Let's see what it's about. Come on, Mr. Ballens.
Today, I'm going to tell you 4 stories that each appear to be headed toward disaster. But in each one, there will be a big final reveal that will completely change what you thought that story was about. But before we get into today's stories,
Mr. Ballens
if you're
being
a fan
cryptic.
of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button a burrito for lunch. But don't tell them it's made with cheese and soft cat food. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications.
See, now you're getting ruthless
so you
again.
Don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
Cat food. Cat food. Big ambitions. Let's go.
On the morning of May 7th, 1931, a 50-year-old man named Harland wiped down the counters inside of the Shell gas station that he managed in Corbin, Kentucky. He was feeling pretty anxious because a supervisor and a district manager from Shell's corporate headquarters were coming to inspect his station that day.
Okay.
He really needed this visit to go perfectly. So Harland had been running this Shell station for a few months now, and he had big ambitions. For one thing, he wanted to start selling food out of his station because truckers that stopped here were always asking him where they could get a meal. And he's thinking, why not just make their meals here? You know, like make some more money. They can buy their food from us. Plus, Harland actually was a cook himself, and he figured he could make the food.
I know, but you know what I mean? You've got like 1931, you've not got like an electric ring cooker or anything, have you? You know what I mean? You're going to have gas stoves or coal stoves, and you know, and that really doesn't go well with a petrol station outside now, does it?
Buy their food from us. Plus, Harland actually was a cook himself, and he figured he could make the food. And then another thing he wanted to do was just improve the station's advertising to draw in more customers. Now, the food idea was harmless enough because really it was just an idea.
You think?
But as for the advertising ambition, you know, to increase advertising for his station, Harland had already begun doing that, and it really hadn't gone well because he had sort of stirred up a big fight with another gas station owner, this guy named Matt Stewart.
Rival
Matt
gas stations.
said that basically Harland was stealing all his business because Harland had actually begun painting these signs advertising for his station, and he was putting them up all over town. And, you know, Matt was basically saying, that's driving me out of business.
Well, why doesn't he just make his own signs like fucking Harland is?
So Matt had begun painting over Harland's signs. So it was a feud between them. So today, during this big visit from corporate, Harland was pretty desperate to show only the good things that were going on and to keep his feud with Matt Stewart under wraps so that his bosses could see that he had everything under control, he had good ideas, he had big ambitions, and he was a guy worth keeping around. Just then, Harland saw a car pull up outside the station, and 2 men in suits got out. So Harland ran out to greet them. He shook their hands and he told them about how well his business was doing, and he was about to take them inside and show them around when a boy suddenly came running into the parking lot with an urgent look on his face. The boy came up to Harland and told him that he had just seen Matt Stewart painting over one of his signs again. And when Harland heard this, even though he was doing his best to be very even keel, to show how responsible he was,
got angry.
You know, in front of these executives, when he heard this, his temper boiled. It was like the exact thing he hoped would not happen today had happened immediately. And so now, all Harland wanted to do was show his bosses, these 2 guys in suits, one of which was his direct supervisor,
Sound like Donkey Kong,
that he was not someone to be pushed around.
Yeah.
And so Harland marched over to these 2 guys in suits to their car. He gets in and he tells the 2 men in suits to get in the car and drive. Moments later, Harland was in the backseat of the car as it sped down the highway. His supervisor was driving, and the district manager was in the passenger seat, and Harland was sort of leaning forward with his head between the seats, squinting out the windshield. Now, Harlan knew his bosses had no idea what was going on here. And so as they just blindly drove down the road, Harlan, basically tried to summarize the situation as if it was just no big deal, just a business dispute, and he was handling it. Then,
no big deal, but you've dragged him into the car and said, get down there as quick as you can. Then played it down.
At some point, Harlan grabbed the supervisor and told him to stop, because up ahead, he saw there was this big barn, and in front of it was this big sign, and there was somebody with a ladder propped up against it, smearing tar all over it. It was Matt Stewart, and what he was smearing tar on was one of Harlan's many shell signs.
Yeah.
And so now the car is stopped, and Harlan, he rolls down one of the windows, and he yells at Matt, like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the supervisor and the district manager are like, what is going on here? But as soon as Harlan began yelling at Matt, it was like all hell broke loose.
Oh,
because
fight.
Matt, as soon as he saw Harlan, he jumped off the ladder and began running towards the car. And at the same time, the district manager climbed out of the passenger seat with his hands up, like he was, gonna calm Matt down. Like, hey, let's talk
pal,
here.
and smacked
But
his head
Harlan
in.
knew, Matt obviously was not going to calm down. Because as Harlan watched, Matt, as he's charging in the direction of the district manager in the car, he's reaching into his jacket and he pulls out a gun.
Oh,
Harlan
shit
shouted
house.
for the district manager to watch out, but he was too late. Matt aimed the gun and fired, and the district manager collapsed onto the ground.
The district
manager?
manager?
So Harlan, he jumps out of the car and he runs to his district manager. And at this
Really?
point, Harlan is operating on pure instinct at this point. And so, the manager, he's profusely bleeding from his chest. And so Harlan drops down and he opens up the guy's jacket to try to find the gunshot wound, to put some pressure on it to try to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
But when he opened up the jacket, not only was the bleeding just immense, and there was just very little
Oh,
Harlan
shot him in the
knew
heart
he
then,
could
didn't he?
do at this point, but he saw there was a gun, like strapped inside of a holster on this manager's chest, which was not all that uncommon for people to have guns on them in rural Kentucky at this time. And so Matt, the aggressor, he's running still towards the car, gun still drawn. And so Harlan just forgets trying to stop the bleed because he knows there's like nothing he can do.
He's dead.
He just grabbed the gun, pulled it out, and he aimed it at Matt, who's still running towards him. And Matt, he fires a shot that goes right past Harlan's head. And then Harlan began returning fire. When the police showed up a few minutes later, the district manager was dead, and Matt Stewart was lying on the ground as well, bleeding from the shoulder, but still alive. And so the officers, not knowing the whole story, just arrested Harlan and also the supervisor, even though they were both trying to say, like, this is not what happened. We were just defending ourselves.
Yeah.
But they weren't hearing it, and they charged Harlan with shooting with intent to kill. And so Harlan's visit from corporate and his ongoing feud with Matt Stewart, the rival gas station owner, appeared to basically have ruined everybody's lives.
Yeah.
But within a few days, everything changed again, because the police realized that Matt was actually the aggressor.
Right.
And so they dropped the charges against Harlan and his supervisor. Then they charged Matt with murder of that manager, and he wound up being sentenced to 18 years in prison. And so, with Harlan's only competition in town now out of the way, in jail for murder, Harlan's Shell Station really flourished. He was getting more and more customers, and also he began doing the thing he had dreamed of, selling food to truckers, namely fried chicken. And in fact, his recipe for fried chicken was such a hit that a few years later, the governor actually honored Harlan by commissioning him as a Kentucky colonel. He was known from then on as Colonel Sanders. And over the next few decades, his gas station restaurant expanded to an international franchise.
So that's why we've got KFC.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
People died for this chicken. Who'd have thought that Kentucky Fried Chicken come from a petrol station? I mean, that's mad. Her diorama. I didn't see KFC coming.
One afternoon in late 1943, a 66-year-old woman named Frances Glesner Lee hunched over a desk in her workroom in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. She had a tiny porcelain doll in one hand and a paintbrush in the other. And what she was doing was painstakingly adding detail to the face of this doll. She put dark circles around the eyes, little gray wrinkle lines on the cheeks, and reddish-brown smears that were dripping down grotesquely from the lips. She put the paintbrush down, and then she reached for a piece of string. This was the final touch. And so slowly and carefully, she tied the string into a noose and then pulled it tight around the doll's neck. Frances then carefully picked the doll up and placed it in the center of this miniature wooden barn that was about 2 feet tall. And she tied the end of the noose around a pipe on the barn's ceiling and then let the doll dangle and sort of swing with its feet hanging just a few inches off the straw-covered floor.
Throw it in the bin, it's a porcelain doll.
Frances got up from her seat, stood back, and admired her work. Behind the hanging doll, inside of this barn, was a tiny saddle hanging over the barn.
Oh, look at that. Look at it. I mean, why? Why do people want to make things that look like this? And to add insult to injury, it's got it like it's been hung.
This back window. And then a couple of inches behind that window, so if you were looking through the barn, sort of out the window, you could see what looked like this beautiful hilly landscape right before dusk. And it was actually just a painting she had positioned to make it appear like that was the outside. Her tiny diorama looked exactly like the real scene of the crime. And she almost felt like she was standing right there with the body. She wondered what everybody would say when they saw it. She expected them to be shocked, but she hoped they'd also be impressed with her work. So Frances was obsessed with death. When she was younger, she had wanted to go to medical school to study the inside of the human body up close. But the schools that she was interested in, specifically Harvard University, wouldn't let her in because she was a woman. Now, she had been very frustrated by this, but she really hadn't seen a way around it. So she had tried for a while to suppress this dark interest she had, death, and just follow the path that was sort of expected of her. She got married, she had kids, and basically spent her whole life at home, entertaining herself with little crafts and projects. But she had really never been happy, not as an adult. And now that she was getting older and realizing she actually didn't have a whole lot of time left on Earth, she'd stopped caring about what she was supposed to be doing. And so now she was going to do whatever she wanted.
Yes.
And for her, that meant doing whatever it took to show the folks at Harvard, the university she couldn't attend because she was a woman, what she was really capable of. And so now she carried her beautiful finished diorama over to a shelf on the side of the room, and she set it down between 2 other murder scenes she had built. There was a bedroom where a couple was tangled up in bloody sheets.
Look at that.
And there was a living room where there was a woman lying at the base of the stairs with an obviously broken neck. And Frances had plans for more murders she was going to recreate, including a stabbing and an arson and a shooting. And just thinking about these crimes made her heart race. This was like the most alive she had ever felt.
Really?
It was like she was finally happy. A little over a year later,
Frances
carried her miniature barn with its tiny swinging corpse down a hallway, but it was covered in a white sheet. Her heart pounded as she pushed open a door and walked into a library that was swarming with police officers. And instantly, those officers surrounded her because she was the reason they were all there. Because her little models of horrific crime scenes were so good that when she, showed those folks at Harvard what they were missing out on, they were like blown away. They were like, yeah, this is incredible. This would be such an amazing tool for homicide investigators. Will you please teach us how you made these? Will you help us create a course on this? And so suddenly, even though Frances was not admitted to Harvard as a student, she began creating curriculum around what we call today forensic science. Frances actually went on to officially found Harvard University's Department of Legal Medicine, which became one of the very first places in the entire United States that was just dedicated to the burgeoning field of forensics. And so today, Frances Glessner Lee is known as the mother of forensic science.
No way. From making models? Forensic science was born with somebody making models? KFC because somebody got killed. I mean, at least no one died in this one apart from the porcelain dolls. which ain't technically alive, so. Some good came out of that one, though, didn't it? You know, some proper good. I mean, KFC's been killing far more than Harlan's fucking boss. You know what I mean? KFC's killed loads of people with cholesterol. Snowcat, this must be the 14,000.
A little after 6 a.m. on New Year's Day 2023, a 27-year-old man named Alex Freeze walked out the door of his uncle's home outside of Reno, Nevada. The sun was just starting to rise, and there was a white blanket of snow covering everything in sight, except...
I'm going to know what this story is. I think I know what this story is before it's even started. This is going to be Jeremy Renner. Hawkeye from the Avengers. This is my prediction. And that £14,000 machine is going to be a snowplow.
For a narrow path leading down the driveway. So this home that Alex's uncle owned was not a regular home. It was like a huge mansion right near Lake Tahoe. And family was really important to Alex's uncle, which is why Alex and his whole extended family had been invited to stay here for the holidays. And over the past few days, there had been this massive snowstorm that buried the whole area under 5 feet of snow. And so now, Alex and his uncle had to clear the snow from the half-mile-long driveway, which was a huge undertaking. Alex heard an engine rumbling somewhere off in the distance, and he looked up to see a pair of headlights coming up the driveway. It was his uncle driving a snowcat, which is basically a huge 14,000-pound industrial snowplow. It basically looked like a cross between a truck and a tank with a bright orange cab and galvanized steel tracks that allowed it to drive over the snow. And so Alex's uncle drove the snowcat right to the top of the driveway, parked it, and he hopped out. And then he told Alex that he was pretty sure he had just cleared enough of a path on this driveway that he could very likely get his pickup truck out of the home, down to the main road.
Yeah.
But he just wanted to actually try it. He wanted to literally drive his truck down the stretch to see if it was wide enough. So Alex watched as his uncle climbed into his pickup truck and then slowly drove down the driveway. But as Alex watched, he could see towards the bottom of the driveway, half a mile away, the truck began to slide, and it slid straight into a snowbank and clearly got stuck. Right. And so Alex, he just looked over at the snowcat, which was parked right next to him at the top of the driveway. He saw there was a hitch on the back, and since Alex had driven it before, he figured that's easily going to be powerful enough to pull his uncle's truck out of the snowbank. So he just climbed into the big orange cab, fired on the snowcat, and headed on down the driveway. And so Alex, he drives the snowcat down the driveway and comes to a stop right in front of the pickup. And he can see his uncle is standing outside of the pickup looking very frustrated and thankful that Alex has, thought to do what he likely would have suggested, which is, bring the snowcat down here. And so Alex, he cuts the engine in the snowcat, he climbs out, he goes over to his uncle, and the two of them work together to attach the pickup to the snowcat with a chain. And then once that was done, Alex's uncle explained to him that he, the uncle, was now going to climb inside of the snowcat, and he was going to be the one who actually pulled the pickup out of the snowbank. And Alex just had to stand by out of the way and unlatch the pickup once they were done. So Alex was like, all right, he stepped out of the way, and Alex's uncle climbed up into the snowcat, turned it on, and began backing up. And sure enough, after just a couple of moments, he had pulled the truck out of the snowbank and back onto the road. It was his cue to, disconnect the two vehicles. And so Alex goes over, he begins, taking the chain off the hitch. But before he could, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the snowcat, the 14,000-pound snowcat, was very slowly sliding forward.
Uh-oh.
And so he sees this is happening, and he certainly doesn't want to get caught between the snowcat and the truck, which was parked. He'd get crushed.
Yeah.
He instinctively jumps up and steps out of that space between the two vehicles, thinking his uncle is going to see this happening and, back up with the snowcat, use those threads to back up out of the way to stop the slide. But to Alex's horror, he sees his uncle has not realized the snowcat is starting to slide because he's exited the cabin and he's jumped down to the snow below. So nobody's driving the snowcat, and it's starting to slide faster and faster. And so Alex doesn't know where to go. There's nowhere to go. He's basically trapped. There's a snow pile that's on one side, there's the truck, and the snowcat coming towards him. And as it's getting closer and closer, he has no idea what his uncle's doing. And so Alex just flings open the driver's side door of the pickup and he leaps inside of there because there's nowhere else to go.
No.
Like, as he turns, he sees the snowcat getting faster and faster, sliding right towards him.
Oh, that must be scary.
He knows that snowcat is easily big enough to completely flatten this pickup truck.
Yeah.
And so he's doomed. And he just prays that, his death will be quick. And so he closes his eyes, he's tucked down, like he has no idea what's going on with his uncle. He just knows his uncle's not in control. And then Alex hears the awful sound of just metal on metal as the snowcat began to crush the truck. But moments later, everything just stopped. The metallic grinding noise stopped, and it was just silent. And Alex, for a second, is like, I can't believe I'm even still alive right now. Like,
okay.
Oh my goodness. His heart's pounding in his chest, and he opened his eyes, and he looked around, and he realized that the snowcat had done some damage to the truck, but it had wound up just kind of pushing the truck through that snowbank into a tree, and then both vehicles just kind of slowed to a stop.
Oh, well, that was all right then.
Alex was safe. Trapped, but safe. So when Alex had dove inside of the vehicle, the snowcat had actually basically slammed the driver's side door shut because it impacted the door first. And some of Alex's clothes were actually trapped in the doorway. So his clothes are stuck in the door, and the snowcat is pressed up against the outside of the door. So he can't go out that way. He can't even move.
Yeah, embankment's on the other side.
But he realized if he wriggled his way, he could actually climb out of his clothes and be free, at least from this side of the vehicle. And so he climbs out of his clothes until he's just down to his long johns, and he climbs out the passenger side of the truck into this big drift of snow, and he climbs his way out of the snow until he's up on the surface, like he's out.
Yeah.
And that's when he realized he couldn't find his uncle. And so he starts shouting his uncle's name. There's no answer. There's no sign of him. He runs around to the side of the snowcat, and he looks up into the cab, thinking maybe his uncle's up there, but there's no one up there. And so Alex, starting to panic now, he begins running his way back up onto the driveway just to get a better look of the area to try to figure out where his uncle went. But when he got up there, he stopped because on the driveway was this huge pool of blood. It would turn out after Alex's uncle had pulled his pickup truck out of the snow, and then when he jumped out of the cab to go join his nephew in the snow, he had forgot to set the parking brake. That's why, seconds later, the snowcat began to shift. And when it began to slide on the snow, all Alex's uncle was worried about, because he couldn't really see his nephew, was that if he doesn't do something, his nephew is going to get crushed between the pickup truck and the snowcat. And so Alex's uncle leaps, because he's down in the snow, he leaps to try to get onto the snowcat, to climb up to the cab up above. But when he jumped, he didn't get high enough, and he got caught up in the tracks of the snowcat, fell to the ground, and the snowcat drove over him, all 14,000 pounds. And so Alex's uncle was crushed, breaking 38 bones. By the time the paramedics arrived, he was literally moments away from death. Alex's uncle's actions, putting himself in grave danger to save someone he loved, was like something out of a superhero movie, which was actually quite fitting. Because the uncle was Jeremy Renner,
soon as I saw the snowcat,
who plays Hawkeye, a superhero and devoted family man in the Avengers movies. Against all odds, Jeremy Renner survived his accident and made a full recovery. And in fact, was back on set just a year after this incident.
That's crazy, isn't it? I knew it was him. As soon as I saw the snowcat, I knew it was him because I remember the story. He's lucky man. You know what I mean? Do you know, one of them little things that you forget to do, like putting the parking brake on and stuff like that, you know what I mean? It's life and death in situations like that, isn't it? Crazy.
Around 9 a.m. on July 18th, 2004, a 29-year-old race car driver started his Corvette in the pit lane at the Sonoma Raceway in California. His racing partner was outside the car helping him put up the window net, which would stop debris from flying into the car if there was a wreck. It was still a few hours before the big race, so cars were sort of speeding around the midway to warm up, and there were TV cameras everywhere. Now, usually, this driver felt really confident on the track, but today, he was undeniably anxious. There had been some mechanical issues with his car the night before, and the crew had been working on it all night. Now, it did seem like all the issues had been resolved by this point, but this driver came from a big family of other NASCAR racers. And in fact, his father had actually died in a crash during a race just 3 years earlier. So ever since then, this driver had been really nervous about the same thing happening to him. So to have these issues with his car, even though they were resolved, it just was making him really stressed. When the window net was all fastened, his racing partner gave him the okay, and the driver buckled himself in, and then he took a deep, steadying breath. Then, like he had done many times before, he began to make his way out onto the track to do a few warm-up laps. As soon as he was out there, the driver hit the gas and began slowly ramping up to speed. And as he did, other cars are zooming past him, pretty much going at full speed. But this is normal. He's just making his way up to their speed, and he's gonna, do some laps. And right as he was reaching the end of the track where he needed to make a turn, he tightened his grip on the steering wheel and he rounded the corner. But then all of a sudden, his car began to spin out and he just lost control. Instinctively, he jammed on the brakes, but it didn't do anything. And he was just helpless as his car careened across the track, narrowly missing other drivers passing by, smashes into the barrier.
It's dangerous race car driving.
He lurched forward and he hears this loud metallic crunching noise. But the driver, he was conscious. He was dazed, but he was conscious. And he took a breath and he realized this was bad, but he wasn't hurt. And now he just needs to get out of his vehicle. And so after doing a quick look around the interior of his car, he could tell that his car was wrecked. Serious damage had been done. But he couldn't worry about that for now. He reached down and he tried to undo his seatbelt so he could get out. But before he could even find the latch, he heard this deafening blast from somewhere in his vehicle.
Damn, look at that.
And within a split second, his entire car was engulfed in flames. Suddenly, it was like the driver couldn't even breathe. He was literally on fire. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't get his seatbelt off. He couldn't see anything but just flames everywhere. And he knew if he didn't get out soon, he was dead. But he was in so much pain from literally being on fire, he could not think straight. It was like he was in full panic mode and just
pain mode. This is like that bloody video with the F1 cars that we did a few months ago, where the guy went under the barrier and it burst into flames, but he actually ended up walking away. Is this going to be a similar situation? But it is a Mr. Ballens video,
He didn't know what to do. He did at some point somehow get his seatbelt off, but it was like all his energy was being sapped up by the flames. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't think. And he just knew his one thought is, I'm dying.
Get out.
But right as he was basically burning to death, he felt two hands grab him under his armpits and pull him out of the car. The next thing the driver knew, he opened his eyes and he was no longer on fire. He was not in his vehicle. He was in a cool, quiet room.
Hospital.
He heard the beep of medical equipment nearby, and when he looked down, he saw that he was obviously in a hospital bed with an IV in his arm and bandages all over his body. He was drowsy and confused, but everything slowly began to come back to him. About, the race, the warm-up laps, the crash. He looked up and he saw his PR manager was standing right over him. And before they could say anything to him, the driver right away asked who had pulled him out of the car and were they okay. But the PR manager just sort of looked confused and then just stared at the driver, not saying anything, like he didn't even know what to say. And so the driver started getting annoyed that, they weren't giving him an answer. And so he asked again, who was it? Who pulled me out of the car?
Don't say he's
dead. Finally, the PR manager answered. They just said, no one. No one pulled you out of the car. You were alone. The driver, when he heard this, was so taken aback that he demanded to see the video of the crash, which we will play for you right now. This is a clip from the TV broadcast. And as you can see, there is no one near the driver's car when it crashes.
You're just confused.
Flames suddenly spring up and engulf the car, and then moments later, the driver opens the door and pulls himself out. And when the driver actually saw this exact clip, he knew what happened. His late father had saved him. The driver who crashed and who was now sitting in the hospital bed was Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Right.
And he believes that his father, the racing legend Dale Earnhardt Sr., was looking out for him that day. And whether it was literally his late father somehow
was he not just confused because of the flames and stuff
out of the car, or if he was just giving his son the strength to do it himself,
yeah,
Junior doesn't really know. But one way or another, he knows his father saved him.
I mean, that's cool for you to believe that. I understand the wanting to believe that and stuff like that, and the fact they want to keep your dad's memory alive and stuff. But when you look at the footage, he clearly pulls himself out of that wreckage. You know what I mean? And maybe the shock of the crash, the smoke inhalation or whatever, the panic, maybe that made him think that his dad's pulled him out when he's done it himself. I'm not quite sure. I mean, the Jeremy Renner story, I already knew. I'd seen that on the news because obviously I keep tabs on things like all things Avengers and stuff like that. So I saw that. But the others, like the KFC one, man, I can't believe the KFC one. That shocked me more than any of the others. Not shocked, like, because the story wasn't as, I mean, I suppose it was sinister as the others because someone died, but to KFC was born out of a rival petrol station war. Do you know what I mean? That's weird. That's crazy. God damn, man. I'm out of here, man. What did you guys think of the stories? Let me know in the comments. I'm gone. See you later.